We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Good evening, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
Is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Time, weather, and
Veteran of 3 foreign wars, entrepreneur, and warrior poet, Tony Arterburn takes on the issues facing our country, civilization, and planet. This is the Arterburn radio transmission.
Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years and can't find him. The FBI also, under the leadership of Louis Freeh, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years and years and years and many years and can't find him. Some doofus jerk-off reporter with a camera crew waltzes right into his hideout and interviews him. And you know what his budget is? Zip, zilch, nothing. Now, that tells us two things. Either everyone in the intelligence community and all of the intelligence agencies of the United States government are blithering idiots and incompetent fools, including the entire apparatus of the FBI and all of their personnel, or they're lying to us. They're not looking for him at all. And the second is the truth. You see, the CIA created Osama bin Laden. They recruited him. They trained him. They found his leadership. They brought them all together. They showed them how to fight the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. And when that was over, they still continued to fund him and train him, and they're now using him to help bring about world government by making him the big boogeyman, because they can't use Saddam Hussein anymore because they needed a new boogeyman. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got in to Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking. And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it.
Well, this is the official broadcast of the apocalypse, ladies and gentlemen. It is a dark day in America, not just for the anniversary, but for the events of yesterday. I think it was John F. Kennedy who said that those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Dark days ahead for the United States if we don't get ahead of this ball, figure this out, why our discourse is disintegrating into some sort of China syndrome meltdown. You remember what that's a reference to, the theory that if a nuclear power plant melts down, it melts to the earth all the way through the core of the earth to China. That's certainly what we're doing. I've spent the last few hours meditating on that as I look through the headlines. And of course, it's September 11th, an anniversary of a very, very dark day in American history, perhaps the darkest. And we'll get into some of that today. But following yesterday's attack, it really made me think. And I saw a post from someone I'd never heard of. It's been shared on my social media, but an influencer. And they said that the left or the progressives will one day beg for a conservative like Charlie Kirk, because where the right is going, it will make him look toothless, which I think at some level, I already thought that. I said that yesterday. What brand of conservatism is offensive about what Charlie Kirk was? I mean, I followed his career for many years. We were on the same radio station in San Antonio. I knew exactly who Charlie Kirk was. And it was just basic stuff like there's two genders and, I'm a Christian, basic conservatism. And, he was a pro-Israel guy. He was a Zionist. There was an interesting interchange he had with Megyn Kelly just before this awful tragic thing that happened to him, that he had made Israel mad at him and some of the supporters of Israel. So that's interesting. And Harrison Smith put out a tweet that said as much, that he knew somebody close to Charlie Kirk and that he was afraid to cross Israel in some way. I don't know. These are strange times. we're going to jump into some of the headlines, but I wanted to get into that. Like, what is this set up? We're definitely being primed for something. I saw a post that Billy Ray Valentine had put on my Twitter. He's doing a show. I didn't get a chance to catch his broadcast, but he said they're pushing us to civil war, of course. And this is exactly what's happening. And what MO does a peak fluoride, super angry leftist, where does the weapons come in? Especially a 200-yard shot on a building. There's some pre-planning in that. There's some cognitive function that goes into having to do that. And then again, I beg the question, what was it that I've watched several videos. What is it that animates people to be so upset about the benign sense of conservatism that Charlie Kirk had? It's absolutely benign. There's nothing in Charlie Kirk's conservatism that in any way, shape, or form was militaristic, was antagonistic. You'll have to help me there. Figure that one out. And we'll get into some of that. It's an interesting time, ladies and gents. I have a talk after this broadcast is over. I'm going to go speak to the Rotary Club in Denison, Texas, about 9/11. All I was told was I asked if I could speak about 9/11 on 9/11, and they said yes. So we're going to see what we can get into. But I opened up the broadcast with, of course, that famous June 28th excerpt from William Milton Cooper, Bill Cooper, broadcasting from his his studio in Eager, Arizona in June of 2001. And I think it's one of the most overlooked pieces of American history, really. If you look at somebody like Bill Cooper, he's a troubled guy and Vietnam vet. It was in naval intelligence, but a savant, a genius in many ways, especially when it came to the realm of conspiracy or the hidden hand or the esoteric. He was on another level. As a broadcaster, he's probably second to none. Matter of fact, the Clinton White House labeled him the most dangerous radio host in America, and Rush Limbaugh had read that memo live on the air in I think in 1995. He said, "See, folks, it's not me. It's Bill Cooper broadcasting out of a shopping center in Arizona." Though, if you go back and look at that broadcast, though, it's June 28, 2001, and CNN was running a story about a camera crew getting in to talk to Osama bin Laden, and he was setting the stage and saying, that Israel and the United States were targets, which is interesting because that he left out a few other entities that were also antagonistic towards international, so-called international terrorism, at least on paper, right? He left out the British, among others, but he called out the United States and Israel in this interview. Might I add, that interview has disappeared. That doesn't exist anymore. You can only find broken links of it, but there's no footage of it. There's a 1998 footage of CNN getting in to talk to Osama bin Laden, but not the June 2001. And I suspect that that's because they were setting the stage for something. And if I remember, I was in Sofia, Bulgaria on September 10th, 2001. I was on the United States team representing the U.S. on the American powerlifting team at the World Powerlifting Championships. I just happened to be a soldier and a veteran, and I'd already done a tour in Kosovo. I remember distinctly watching CNN International. I was with my dad, and I looked over, and it burned in my mind. Now, this is September 10th, 2001. And I remember I looked over and I saw the TV, and they were talking about a story. Now, this is another camera crew story that gets whitewashed through and lost in Donald Jeffries would call it the the American memory hole, maybe the international memory hole. But on September 10th, 2001, a fake camera crew got in to talk to the leader of the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. Now, the Northern Alliance was the most adversarial group opposing the Taliban and opposing groups like Al-Qaeda. And they blew up and assassinated, with this fake camera crew, the leader of the Northern Alliance. Now, that's pre-planning. And you got to wonder who made that decision. Lots of unanswered questions about 9/11. And every year we talk about it. On its anniversary 2 years ago, I was in New York City along with Billy Ray and Don Jeffries and Charlie Robinson and Wayne McCroy and many others, talented researchers. Richard Gage was there, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And I thought we had a great summit. It was a presentation of the things that we do. I just went off the cuff and talked like I do now, but I think there's so much there, so much weight. And when you get something like yesterday that pops up, you're reminded about the fragility of life, and that, whatever your hand finds, is like the Bible will say, do it gladly, do your work, stay on mission, stay on point, and know what's important, and get caught up in things that will drain you of your life force and your any sort of joy in this realm, on this plane of existence, as we get caught up into so many things. And those are always unfortunate. They're wake-up calls when we see something like that happen. And it's a harbinger, and I don't want it to be, but I think the country's in really bad shape when it comes to discourse, and something is pushing us. Something, I believe, is directing us towards more antagonism and taking our eye off the ball of the real goal here, which is to have some common ground. I mean, if we're not united in any way, and just like Lincoln said, a house divided against itself will not stand. I think that's where we are, folks. I think that's the goal of whoever's pushing these buttons. I want to look at some headlines with you. Thanks for being here. My support group. A lot of people I don't go to meetings. I just show up on WWCR and my live stream and talk to all of you around the world. This is according to the headlines of Drudge, and this just came in when I was on the David Knight show this morning. Let me share this screen. We'll put it up. 1 second. This is Drudge Report. Wall Street Journal is putting this out, by the way, that the ammunition engraved with trans and anti-fascist ideology. And I'm not sure if they just mean the casings. I hadn't had time to look at the story. That is, it seems to be the setup. More is going to happen with this story. And, you know, so long, it reminded me of what happened in Vegas. Because as soon as the federal agencies get involved, then there's no story. Then you just don't find out anything. This is what happened. I mean, Stephen Paddock, we still don't know. This was October of 2017. I still don't know who this guy is. And you never will. Or the shooter in Uvalde. What's the latest? What's the latest from what happened with that kid? You know, how do you afford to get the assault rifles and the weapons and working at fast food joints? How did he afford weapons that I can't afford? Well, that's another, federal agencies get involved and then you don't know anything. Most likely by design. All right, I want to get into some more headlines concerning this too, and then we're going to get into some financial stuff. Maybe talk a little bit of 9/11, and I've got an article from Natural News on UFOs, just in time, just in case you don't know what's next. And it's my job to give you the best analysis. And in this project of art, this is episode 515, has always been about sussing out whatever is next, whatever's the truth, whatever the trends are, to the best of my ability. And we're going to talk a little bit. I think this decade is not through with us, giving us things we couldn't have imagined in 2020. All right, let me pull this next article up. This is Zero Hedge, and just kind of where we are. I think this is a good barometer of the mental sickness of people. It's primarily the mental illness is on one side of all of this, but we have it everywhere. And it's even pervasive in alternative media now. And especially you go into the chat groups of a lot of these shows and you're like, I mean, why don't we just all give up? You see these guys that are black pilled or extreme racism or whatever, whatever defect they have, and they're projecting it onto you. Just a lot of anger, a lot of hate. I don't care what side you're on. I see the mental illness everywhere. But there is a certain kind of mental illness, and it finds itself in these circles. This is Zero Hedge. MSNBC fires Matthew Dowd for suggesting Charlie Kirk had it coming. And then Liz Warren, Jim Psaki doubled down. MSNBC has fired political analyst Matthew Dowd after he suggested that conservative activist and TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated on Wednesday, had it coming. During the coverage of Kirk's shooting, anchor Katie Tur asked Dowd about the environment in which a shooting like this happens. A disgusting framing in itself, to which Dowd replied, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which lead to hateful actions. And I think this is the environment we are in. You can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place. That's a logic of a diseased mind. And I go back to, well, I think it's interesting. I go back to my original question in all of this. What brand of extremism did Charlie Kirk represent? It's the most benign. Again, what in it does it deserve? It doesn't deserve violence at all. But I mean, the opposite, the animated opposition to somebody as normal as what Charlie Kirk was. I mean, you realize that the outlier in this situation, like if I'm talking about the things that I believe in, I'm the extremist. Now, on some of these social issues and stuff, I think most of it's an op. And I don't even want to engage. Like I would never show up to a college campus to engage college kids like Ben Shapiro or others. One, it's low-hanging fruit. I'm not really changing anybody's mind. And I mean, I think it's good to debate. It's just not me. It's not what I want to do. But these are minds that aren't developed yet. These are very impressionable, malleable young people that have had a cushy life, and they're very susceptible to Marxism and cultural Marxism, as we've seen. And cultural Marxism is really a frequency of Satan. And it's really what it is. I mean, you can call whatever your idea of Satan or evil is, that's a frequency. It is a bad frequency. It is when you tap into cultural Marxism, it is, and the prototype is the French Revolution, it's Jacobism. It's the beheadings, it's the reign of terror, it's the Bolshevik Revolution, it's all of that. It's the Gulag Archipelago, it's the starving of 4 million Ukrainians, it's the mass grave that is China. It's 60 million dead, 70 million dead under Mao. Like that's what it is. That's what cultural Marxism. That's the frequency it's in. So these kids get it susceptible to it. And so they show up at these college campuses and you get somebody like Charlie Kirk who just is normal. I mean, I've watched the videos. I don't understand I really tried to understand what the extremism was. Like what would push somebody. So to me, there's something more to this with this shooting. There's probably layers to it. And it doesn't even fit the MO of one of these people, like a pro-trans, anti-fascist, whatever. These aren't your, the anti-fascists of the 1930s that pushed back against Hitler's Germany were communist and they were militant. I'm not sure you could say the same thing about these modern anti-fascists, but maybe so. Maybe they become weaponized. This is a tweet by Western Lensman. The despicable ghouls at MSNBC immediately attacked Charlie Kirk in wake of shooting. Matthew Dowd blames Kirk's pushing hate speech as reason he was shot. Again, he says, hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which leads to hateful actions. Dowd's comments set off a firestorm, resulting in a public apology from MSNBC President Rebecca Kutler, who called the statement inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable. We apologize for his statements. As Cutler, said from MSNBC's X account, there is no place for violence in America, political or otherwise. Dowd took to Blue Sky to issue a similar apology to an echo chamber of leftists. So sorry I got caught. Okay. I apologize for my tone and words. Let me be clear. I in no way intended for my comments to blame Kirk for his horrendous attack. Meanwhile, both Senator Elizabeth Warren and former Biden spokes and MSNBC personality Jen Psaki blamed President Trump with Warren, suggesting he needs to tone down his rhetoric. Well, that's the price of free speech in America, folks. And might I add, it's not just, you should be able to say anything you want. Anything. It's like Voltaire said, I may not agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to say whatever you've said. That's the kind of attitude we should have on free speech, because when we lose that, and we've lost a great deal of it, it's hanging on by a thread. We might have freedom of speech. We don't necessarily have freedom of reach. It's the last holdout. It's the last refuge for free speech is anywhere. And this is this country. Is this the last bit of this tradition? Nobody needs to tone down anything. Trump put out a 4-minute video at the end. He says, for years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and mass murderers. Well, on that, he has a big point there. Yeah, when you start comparing Charlie Kirk to those who facilitated the Holocaust and, you know, your image of pure evil, when all they're doing is saying things like, yeah, there's two genders, and marriage is best to facilitate a family, and you know, people should have the right to own a firearm and stuff like that. I mean, this is like basic stuff that Charlie Kirk represented. I mean, why did they get a low? I mean, if they ever really just heard what I espouse, like, I think your entire construct of the life that you perceive is false. Like, not only like your mind is colonized. Like, I don't even think that you're wrong. I just think that you're defective. Like, you've been lied to. You're inside of a psyop being mind controlled. That's what I think of the people that are captured by the fulcrum of cultural Marxism. Like, do you ever stop and think about who funds you? Like, I go to the deeper questions. Like, do you think it's demonic that you get visibly upset and animated when somebody wants to stop a war? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about, you know, you're supposedly anti-corporate, but you shill for corporations like nobody in history ever has? Do you think about the duality or the friction of your mind? Like, you want to tax the rich, but the rich fund all of your programs and all of your thing. I'm talking about the super rich, not the Forbes Fortune 500. Imagine living inside of that lie. Like Solzhenitsyn said, live not by lie. I try not to. I mean, everything I try to espouse, I want to figure out if I'm speaking from a place of wisdom and knowledge and basis and truth. If I can't, you know, I don't want to live any other way. I can't live in that duality. But it must be exhausting all the time to frame yourself as being part of the open and kind portion of society, and really you're just angry and animated by hate and degeneracy and a meltdown of your own faculties. It's bizarre to me. So it must be exhausting. You can see them in the people that confront, like, you're mad about things that don't matter. Like, nobody's stopping anyone from living whatever life. I mean, this is 2025 in the United States of America. It's not 1950. It's not 1850. Like, name me something that is oppressive. You can't. Well, I mean, I could probably think of, you know, I can think of some groups that are having a pretty hard time. You know, white Christian males are having a pretty hard time. Christian males in general having a pretty hard time. There's some other things that haven't, I mean, demographically, look who's suicide rates, just men in general. And look at that. You could look at groups that are having a pretty hard time. Veterans, you know, combat veterans had a pretty rough time. You got sold, you know, a pack of lies. You sent off to meat grinder wars, and you come back home and things aren't as they seem. And that's another thing that happens to veterans, is the cognitive dissonance there, where you start to these opposing ideas in your mind, you start to learn things and can eat away at you. So very similar to that psychic tension that you have I'm sure the psychic tension that you have as a leftist. Charlie Kirk says he wanted to be remembered for his faith. And I think he will be. I mean, he's just a kid. Didn't live long enough really he probably, on a long enough timeline, somebody like Kirk would have done an arc, my arc of where I've come from isn't that extreme, but there's beliefs and things I don't have anymore, obviously. I mean, things about foreign policy that I've always, since I was young, I wanted a constitutional foreign policy. I was a big fan of Ron Paul. I wanted to bring the troops home, just being a combat vet. And I thought for a long time that September 11th was incompetence and a result of blowback. But I don't believe that anymore. I think there's some truth to that a little bit, but I think that was obviously, it's an anomaly. I think it's more like what David Icke pointed out as the trigger event, let it happen on purpose, or even perhaps a MEHOP of make it happen on purpose, some sort of construct to bend the river of time. I think it was a ritual in many ways, and a way for the surveillance state to be kickstarted, the Patriot Act, the looting of the United States Treasury, the resetting of the global chessboard, the ushering in of digital currencies and other things that would be, or at least the goal of control of digital currencies, and the weakening of the United States to make it an economy sector instead of a real power. That's why we're just flailing around doing stupid things right now, where we're not actually power brokering anymore like we used to. I mean, say what you will about Kennedy or Nixon, they had summits. There was the SALT Treaty that Nixon did, the Strategic Arms Limitation Agreement. There was détente throughout the 1970s with Brezhnev, and Reagan had Reykjavik. I mean, Kennedy did the upper atmospheric testing ban with Khrushchev. They had the Cuban Missile Crisis, but there was a lot of headway done there. Eisenhower had that. I mean, there's big power plays that we used to have. We don't do that anymore. We just flail around and do schizophrenic things like threaten to topple Venezuela, which has nothing to do with anything. Meanwhile, we're not ending the wars, all the rest. I mean, you look at the big picture. All right, let's continue down the road here. I'm going to go to the comments, and then we'll get into some financial news. There's an article up on Activist Post. Good to see you. I'm on the YouTube chat. I've got Harps over there in the YouTube, and then and Din. Good to see you guys. Let's go over onto the Rumble chat. Well, there's an active chat today over on Rumble. You can find this program always on the America Unplugged channel over on Rumble. Brandon Bennett says, rest in peace, Charlie. Yeah, I agree with that. Indeed. Really sad. Marky Mark, New Jersey says, the problem is that with the modern left, anyone to the right of Chairman Mao or Joseph Stalin is considered an extremist. Yes. Harp says some truth bombs about to hit the Texas Rotary Club. Yeah, I mean, I will go somewhat easy, but I think anybody attending today, I just managed to make it 30 minutes because I'm just going to tell a little bit of a story. I'll just tell a little bit of a story, and then we won't be the same. You'll never look at September 11th the same again after that. What World Spell said, I never listened to anything Kirk ever said except maybe a clip. Yeah, I don't know if you know. I don't know if I'm following your line of logic. I'm not sure that I would say that we're watching any sort of pageant. Yeah, Twisted Communique says Kirk is proof they will take out their own. Yeah, there's definitely something to this that's more than a simple explanation will suffice. I think there's something to this that's very sinister. And again, it's like we're just being primed more and more. Because people that are otherwise not activated on normal, like you can look across, and I haven't said anything on social media. I just was waiting to talk to all of you. People that are normally not activated are active because of the level of violence, and the shock nature of it all. All right. Let's do some financial news really quick. I talked to David Knight this morning, and some things that I've been following I think is really interesting to watch and then we talk a little bit about precious metals and, of course, the major shifts in the monetary system, folks. I mean, it's happening way faster than I had anticipated. But some things for you guys to take note of. One, there's two different ratios you need to follow. That's the gold silver ratio, and then that's the gold to Bitcoin ratio. It's something I've been following the last month or so. Just like I wanted to see where that's going. I want to look at historic trends. But the silver to gold ratio, something really important is happening. Silver's pacing with gold, right? It's not gold's breaking all-time highs, but silver is staying in the race with it. And gold crossed over close to $3,700 an ounce and broke another all-time high in the last week. But silver kept pace with it. It's 88 ounces or 87.7 ounces of silver to make 1 ounce of gold. Now, historically, that's not been the case. As I've mentioned many times, it's either been 10 to 20 to 1. And then sometimes it goes as high as 40 ounces of silver. But in this modern era, we've gone to the 80s, 90s, 100s. Even I mentioned to David Knight, the first quarter of 2020, we saw 125 ounces of silver to make 1 ounce of gold. The ratio was completely skewed. So silver's staying up there, and I think that's in large part to the governments that are buying now. That's the Russians adding as strategic reserve assets. So be watching that really closely as we see that's pacing with gold, because it's with the rate cuts that are impending and all the fear and uncertainty about the FUD all across the globe right now on with the financial system and the monetary system in general. I think you're going to see massive moves in gold, and you're still going to see silver keeping pace with it. And the all-time high of silver is $52.50 from 1980. I was asked today if, do I see, $150 or $200 an ounce silver? No, I don't see that, but I definitely think, without giving you investment advice, that I think we will see in this year, there's a strong possibility, more likely than not, that silver will finally reclaim its all-time high from 1980. And we'll see what happens there. Too much has happened, too much dollar debasement, and the market caps for these things are ridiculous, and in a world of hundreds of trillions of so-called perceived value of currency and stock markets and real estate and sovereign wealth funds, hundreds of trillions, silver has a $2 trillion market cap or whatever it is. And I'll need to track that. Well, maybe we'll talk about that next week. But it's something ridiculous for how many trillions are actually out there. As a monetary metal, in the face of all this, it's nothing. And the gold to Bitcoin ratio is another thing I was tracking this morning, because I was looking at that. The gold to Bitcoin ratio is about 31.1. So it takes about 31.1 ounces of gold to make 1 Bitcoin. In December of 2024, it took 40. So Bitcoin's been trading sideways. There's still a lot of things happening with integration and adoption and all of that, the price above 100,000 seems to be probably most likely where the bottom is of any sort of resistance for trading. But it's not going parabolic. It's not going to where a lot of the Bitcoin advocates, and I like Bitcoin, and that's part of my business. But I think we're just talking about reality. It's a long-term project for adoption, for integration, and all the rest that will come to make that price bump higher. But it just goes to show silver and gold are still a monetary metal. They always will be, regardless of technology. Bitcoin solves a lot of problems, and it's great for long distances, and it's great to be able, and I like it stabilized, by the way. I mean, honestly, I think it should be a stable thing as much as possible, where if you're going to get in and out of other commodities, and it should be stable there. If it's trending up, and fine, but it should be measured. I like it better that way. And I think it's good for business that way. Even though, it'd be great if it was stable at a much higher price, but I think we take what we can get. Over 100,000 is just fine for right now, as it's more integration happens. All right, so let's go into Kitco. All right, this is one of the one of those articles that always go, yeah, I get it. Kitco.com. Clearly, weaker economy will drive gold through 4,000 in 6 months, says a strategist. A top European strategist is forecasting that gold will reach $4,000 an ounce and silver $50 an ounce within the next 3 to 6 months, arguing that a rapidly weakening U.S. economy will force the Federal Reserve into aggressive action. Philip Gizels, chief strategy officer at BNP Paribas Fortis, made the call in an exclusive interview with Kitco News. His comments followed a bombshell report that the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics that revised U.S. job growth for the year through March down by a record 911,000 jobs. Okay. There's a 911,000. The job market, this is a quote, the job market is clearly weaker than most people thought, Gazelles told Kitco News, arguing that the data confirms the U.S. economy is slowing significantly. The BLS revision followed a summer where job growth averaged a meager 29,000 per month, and the June number revised to a net loss of 13,000 jobs, the first negative print since 2020. The news prompted J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon to state bluntly, the economy is weakening. Hey, I remember something very distinct that Jamie Dimon had mentioned a while ago, Jamie Dimon. Remember the economic superstorm? I wonder what happened to that. It was supposed to be an economic superstorm. Do you remember, ladies and gentlemen? I remember that. He hasn't had that rhetoric lately. For Gazelles, this means that the Federal Reserve will be forced into more aggressive action than just rate cuts. When asked if the Fed would restart quantitative easing or implement yield curve control, he was unequivocal. This is exactly what they will do, he stated. When push comes to shove, they will go there. It's going to drive real assets even higher. And he says the economic uncertainty in the U.S. is occurring as the political foundations of Europe are cracking. The government of France, the EU's second largest economy, officially collapsed overnight after Prime Minister Francois Bayrou was forced to resign. Yeah, and the European Central Bank, they decided to not do any more rate cuts, and it didn't do anything to the price of gold. It's funny, just from a perspective of, following this stuff for many years, folks, the gold price is starting to do its own thing outside of whatever these central banks are proposing. I know that you can see it does affect a little bit, but the trend is because what you're seeing is central bank buying. You're watching the collapse of the current monetary order, the currency systems in general worldwide. This is the trend. You even see David Knight mentioned to me this morning about El Salvador, who's made Bitcoin a legal tender. which I applaud, and I think every country should. But they are getting into gold and putting some gold in their reserves as well. And Tether, the stable coin, is putting holdings into gold mining. And that's the leader of the dollar stable coins. That just says a lot to where the finding of value in a world that is rapidly changing is going to be coming from stable things like gold and silver. All right, let's go over to Activist Post. This is something that caught my eye as well. Just some food for thought on this September 11th. This is I always seem to find a Michael Schneider blog over on Activist Post, but it's the first place I look when I get up in the morning, especially on show days. And I thought this was interesting. We can discuss this before we get into our last article of the day. New poll finds nearly 70% of the U.S. think the American dream is dead. And the month of September is typically the worst month of the year for the stock market. This is Michael Snyder of the Economic Collapse blog via Activist Post. By the way, if you haven't gone over to Activist Post, do so. My friend Charlie Robinson has a great site over there. And you can sign up for his newsletter. It's a great news aggregator. I know he's put a lot of work into it. Michael Snyder says, I kept warning about what would happen if we stayed on the path that we're on. For decades, our leaders have been making unbelievably bad decisions, and now the consequences are really starting to catch up with us. The cost of living has become incredibly painful. A larger housing bubble than the one that we faced just prior to the Great Recession is beginning to burst, and large companies are conducting mass layoffs all over the country. We were handed the key to the greatest economic machine the world has ever seen, and our leaders have completely wrecked it. As a result, economic pessimism has soared to unprecedented heights. If you don't believe me, consider what a new Wall Street Journal NORC poll just discovered. About 70% of us now believe the American dream is dead, and only 25% of Americans think they have a good chance of improving their standard of living. America has becoming a nation of economic pessimists. More than 3/4 said they lack the confidence that life for the next generation will be better than their own, the poll found. Nearly 70% of people said they believe the American dream, that if you work hard, you will get ahead, no longer holds true or never did. The highest level in 15 years. Well, I think the issue here too, what's baked into all of this. If you go to the website, WTF happened in 1971, just the consequences of having unsound money, as opposed to having a gold standard, as opposed to having a standard at all. And when you have the hidden costs of everything that is inflation, when you have to dig in and work twice as hard to make half as much, and your savings dwindle. I mean, that's what made the American dream possible in the first place, is that when you have sound money, you don't have to be a stock wizard. You don't have to have fancy computational powers to put into some savings account or some plan or a 401k or an IRA or something, or a mutual fund. You can literally just put your dollars away and save, and you can put it in a house or whatever. And at the end of the day, you will be better off. You work hard, you get ahead, you save money. But those things no longer apply. And it's becoming more and more evident they don't apply in that way anymore, because the rules of the game has changed. In the early 1970s, folks, there wasn't ads on TV for getting a Charles Schwab account. There wasn't any of that. There wasn't, in the early 1970s, there wasn't IRAs or 401ks. The average person wasn't in the stock market. The average person was looking to buy a home or get a better job or make a little bit more. That was the savings plan. That was the retirement plan, whatever it was. And yes, we had our moments where we had the New Deal and you had Social Security and all the rest of that stuff. That's a completely different argument. My phone, it's so funny. I try to get a little bit of a break from it, but it rings constantly, which is not a bad thing. All right. I'll have to go here in a minute, but I wanted to finish this article. Sorry, I got looked over at my phone. I got like 15 text messages from the so, always fun. Let me see. I think I know what they want me to do. Hold on. We got to do this in real time, live on air, ladies and gentlemen. I think I know what they want me to do. This is part of being the CEO of Wise Wolf. And I'll get back to this article. Yeah, that's what needed to happen. Well, that's what happened. You got lots going on. Beans is my producer today. She's also in charge of communications, and she's napping, folks. Michael Snyder says, those numbers are absolutely dismal, but things didn't have to turn out this way. Following the Great Recession, many of us laid out our plans for fundamentally transforming the system, but that didn't happen. Instead, our leaders simply patched up the old system and started inflating bubbles that ended up becoming much larger than the bubbles that burst the last time around. Because now we're on the verge of another global financial crisis, and throughout our history, the month of September has typically been the worst month of the year for the stock market. History shows that the Dow Jones Industrial Average has generated an average monthly decline of 1.1% in September and finished higher only 42.2% of the time, dating back to 1897, according to Dow Jones market data. There's this great movie, if you're a fan of films, that didn't get a lot of notoriety, but I thought it was really interesting. It's just called August. And it's about August of 2001. And it follows this tech firm CEO and his brother. And I don't want to spoil the film if you ever find it. But at the end, they meet up with a generational wealth person. And it's played by David Bowie. And he kind of tells them how things really work. It's kind of like that scene on Network where Ned Beatty shows how actually things actually are, the grim realities of things. But that's a good movie. It's supposed to be, the August before September of 2001. And it is true that there's historically a lot of downturn in the month of September. But that being said, I don't think any of these metrics apply much anymore. The office and multifamily sectors of commercial real estate loans got further bludgeoned in August despite large-scale extend and pretend and forbearance deals executed in the hopes for better times and lower interest rates and more demand so lenders don't end up with the property and huge loss. The delinquency rate of office mortgages that have been securitized into commercial mortgage-backed securities spiked to 11.7% in August, the worst ever, a full percentage point above even the peak meltdown rate of the financial crisis. Well, that is true. And I think if you've listened to this broadcast or listen to people like Gerald Celente go on to the David Knight Show, that time bomb of the commercial lending and the commercial office space and all the stuff that was even post 2020. What was it that it wasn't that long ago that one of the biggest firms in Canada sold a skyscraper in Manhattan for $1. They just wanted it off the books because it was such a liability. That's still very much a looming crisis. All right. Let's jump over into the last story of the day, and then I'll get you guys out of here. My phone today. I'm going to have to start figuring out if I can put the phone on silent. About a month or two ago, I decided I would answer the phones because we need to. Because I was like, what's going on? Why is it so crazy? The economy, if you look at it, a lot of things seem like you look at the price of metals, you think, oh, well, that's great, for a metals business. Well, that's kind of okay, but you got to have the people buying also. You can buy from people all day long. And that's kind of what we've been doing. Somebody's buying, and it's large. We got to think about that. Just a little bit of intel from your friendly gold and silver broker, folks. All right. Let's jump in the last story of the day. We got about 5 minutes. All right. This caught my eye. This is natural news. UFO deflects U.S. missile in declassified video. Congress demands answers as whistleblowers allege cover-up. Declassified footage shows a U.S. Hellfire missile failing to destroy a glowing orb off Yemen in October of 2024, raising questions about superior unknown technology. 3 military whistleblowers testified under oath that the U.S. government suppressed UAP reports, destroys records, and retaliates against those who speak out. No known human technology can explain the orb's ability to survive a direct missile strike, according to veterans and lawmakers. Bipartisan frustration grows over intelligence agencies' refusal to disclose UAP data, even to Congress and past presidents. I don't like them. I don't know why we had to redo this, reclassify these things as UAP. Unknown aerial phenomenon. I'm not sure why, other than a rebranding package. The footage recorded by an MQ-9 Reaper drone on October 30th, 2024 depicts a 100-pound missile striking the object only for it to ricochet off before the orb accelerates away at speeds no U.S. aircraft can match. The video obtained by Rep. Eric Burleson of Missouri from an anonymous whistleblower was presented during the House Oversight Subcommittee hearing titled Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. Wow, that's a long title. The longer the title, the less important it is. Just think about it, folks. Like, if your title is really long, if the title of something is really long, it's not really important. Or it definitely doesn't have the gravitas. Remember that word. Green light given to engage missiles appears to be ineffective against the target, Burleson posted on X, formerly Twitter, after the hearing. This is not science fiction. This is a real threat or opportunity that we don't understand. Well, I'll close with this. And the reason I brought that up, I think with this broadcast, and if you're turning into parapolitics, precious metals, and welcome to tomorrow, and all the things that I try to keep relevant here as we gather on Thursdays and try to suss out whatever the truth is. This is something we're going to be seeing a lot more of. And I'll leave that for you to draw your own conclusions and your own opinions on what that means. And we opened the broadcast up with Bill Cooper on June 28, 2001, talking about 9/11. But one of the things that Bill Cooper saw when he was a sailor, when he was on a naval vessel out at sea, was a USO, a very large, unidentified, submergible object. And it went out of the water and then flew away. And he was told never to talk about it. So something to, this is not anything new under the sun. These are things that have been floating around or have been part of the lore of the military-industrial complex in the Cold War since 1947 and before. I'm in the town, Denison, Texas, where the term flying saucer originated. A lot of people think it was 1947. It was Mount Rainier and Kenneth Arnold, but it wasn't. It was 1878 right here in Denison, Texas. And a farmer was out hunting and looked up and saw what he described as a a saucer. So something to that, right? And then we're going to see whatever this is, and it could be a breakaway civilization, breakaway technology, could be something dimensional, could be something spiritual, could be all kinds of things, could be multiple things, but definitely part of whatever's next. So I'll leave you with that on the September 11th, 2001. Wolfpack.gold. Go check out all the great deals we got at Wolfpack. You got to. I got to go jump on this. I usually say I jump on a call, but I'm going to go knock out this talk at the Rotary Club. So Wolfpack.gold, Arterburn.gold. We appreciate you being here very much, Beans and myself and the crew. I'm going to go check on everybody. You guys take care of each other. End of transmission.